Stephen Somerville has been in touch, says, seeing Jack Carty in there is a relief, as he has been the one who has stepped up big time in games for Connacht. Now he can hopefully step up when it comes to Ireland. It's a big test for him. The world is littered with players who got into the team, came out of the team, went away, licked their wounds, worked on their game and came back ready to go, and particularly in his position and particularly at his age. But how bad was the situation originally? How bad was the thing that he's been labelled with since it happened, scapegoated for, I would say, purposely by anyway, it seems like it was a handy scapegoat to this guy. We didn't have Sexton, and we did have Sexton for the New Zealand game. That didn't really work out, did it? So anyway, the Japan game, Eoin, you've been going back doing PhD level analysis of this.
Yeah, watched all 60 minutes of Jack Carty's time on the pitch yesterday from the Japan game, the second game of the Rugby World Cup in 2019. And spoiler alert, if you're scapegoating Jack Carty for this defeat, you're barking up the wrong tree completely. Doesn't mean though that he's completely absolved the blame. And I think Andy Dunn put it succinctly yesterday when he said in attack he was good, in defence maybe not so good. So went back through the game. The game is available on YouTube for anybody who wants to put themselves through that level of self-torture after the show this morning. And I've just picked out a couple of moments as we go chronologically through the story of Jack Carty in the second game of the Rugby World Cup in 2019. So in the first minute we see Jack Carty with a couple of reverse passes, Ireland taking the ball straight into contact as you'd expect under Joe Schmidt. If this was any other Joe Schmidt player, you'd expect them to carry the ball into contact, but in this situation Jack Carty puts it to boot in behind the Japanese line. There's no one there to pick it up for Ireland, and there is no real kick chase there. As you can see, there's plenty of bodies behind the ball on the right wing, and nobody's making anything of that, but it shows the early intent from Jack Carty that he's not going to take the ball into contact. He's going to kick behind the line. Whether or not that's an actual tactic instructed to Jack Carty at that moment, it's hard to tell. So that's in the very first minute of the game. You'll remember that Jack Carty kind of started this game like a house on fire. Over the next little while then there is a little bit of a warning sign from Japan where they get in behind the Irish line through a grubber kick. Stockdale gets a little bit lucky versus Matsushima. Maybe Japan could have taken a lead early on in that game. And then in the 9th minute, Carty has his hands on the ball for a penalty. You can see Conor Murray facing the other way. I think what the Ireland players are electing to do here is to go for touch to the left. So this is to the left of the posts, and that will be the conventional thing to do, to go to the left. But Jack Carty actually takes the ball and goes quick, and he tries to go for Keith Earls on the right hand side. It's way too wide for Keith Earls, and as we'll see, he tries to make an acrobatic lunge towards the line, but he's absolutely nowhere near it. Not Keith Earls' fault, maybe not Jack Carty's fault either, but really what he should have been doing is going for the left corner if he was playing by the Joe Schmidt rules. I would say that Joe Schmidt would have been fuming from that incident in particular. It's one that I actually completely forgot about, and Japan end up winning their own line out, clearing their own ball, and it's at the halfway line instead of Ireland having their own line out in the corner. So that kind of perhaps sums up maybe one of the first things that went out of line at the start. Then in the 11th minute, Ireland are into the opposition half. Carty drops back, goes for the corner, is well away from it. He had Kearney outside of him, and there was a change on the left Japan wing before the game. The commentators are picking this up, and immediately after that there's a simple pass to get Ireland out wide on the left. There's not so much space, and Ireland get 3 consecutive offloads out of their hands at the moment, which is something again that I'd totally forgotten. The commentators at this point are saying that the move was a little bit too open for Joe Schmidt's liking. That was more offloads than they had in the entirety of the game against Scotland. So as we can see, we're into the 14th minute here for Ireland. This is a free play. Ball is popped back to Carty, who goes to the right one more time, and this is up for Gary Ringrose, who ends up scoring a try. But again, the key point here is that this is a free play. My recollection of things was that Jack Carty was just getting the ball in open play and popping the ball around, as he did on occasion. But the 2 tries that Ireland score in the first half are from Jack Carty and from free shots, essentially. What we then have is, if we move this on to the 20th minute, is Jack Carty getting ball off the line out. He goes with a big pass out to the left hand side to Stockdale, who gets tackled on the 5 metre line. Ireland go through a couple of more phases, and Carty gets the ball into his hands again, closer to the posts, but it's penalty Ireland. It's another free hit. Carty on this occasion goes high with the ball, gets himself on the ball again with the up and under, taps it down to Rob Kearney, and it's try time again for Ireland. So Ireland have got 2 tries on the board after 21 minutes. Carty's converted one of them. The second one was a pretty easy conversion, and Ireland got both of their tries off free hits essentially I don't think Sexton would have done anything different in those occasions, and I don't think Carty is stepping out of line too much, with the exception of the Keith Earls effort at the start.
I mean, like, that was absolutely keeping everybody honest. It meant that. Is there any possibility that it was designed? First penalty you get, go for crossfield kick. We've got Keith Earls. He's really fast. He's very athletic. You're a great kicker. We're going to try this. What we're going to do is we're going to make everybody fake it that you're just going to kick to the corner. But just be aware. And obviously, you would hope that the rest of the team, the Irish team, responds to, ooh, this guy, he's going to put me in space every opportunity he gets. I'm on the far wing, and he's thinking, I've got Earlsy here. I think that's great.
And as I said there as well, the commentators are talking about this change on that Japanese wing. This was clearly a plan. I would say that if you broke it down, the amount of times that Carty kicks to the right as opposed to the left is huge. If you move things on then to the 23rd minute, the ball is passed out to Carty from the restart. He kicks cross-field to Earls again, and the ball is passed into Carney from Earls, and Ireland are well inside the Japan half. So again, this is that tactic again. Jack Carty gets the ball out to the right to Keith Earls. So maybe it didn't work out at the start, and maybe he should have gone for the corner because it was a penalty. But on this occasion, it works out quite well, and Ireland have got good yards rather than the hard yards that they tended to make under Joe Schmidt. Then we get into the area about, I guess, some of the defensive work, and there was a moment in the 27th minute where he jumps off the line to tackle Matsushima, but he ends up going backwards. And already at this point, this is the 27th minute, the commentators make the point that Ireland have missed more tackles in this game alone than they have against Scotland. And just to be clear, that's not Jack Carty who's missing tackles. He finishes up with 3 missed tackles in this game. It's the second highest in fairness. Gary Ringrose finished with 4, but there's a number who finish on a pair of missed tackles. But already by the 27th minute, they've missed more tackles than in the entirety of the Scotland game. And then a couple of minutes later, he's shoved back into tackle again. But in the 31st minute, what we have here is a pretty key moment of the first half, where Rory Best drastically overthrows an Ireland line-out. As we can see it there, it's well over James Ryan's arms at that point. And then it's a hugely dominant collision for Japan. If we roll this on one more, which Jack Carty is involved in, they go down Carty's alley here, and we can see that he's in a bit of bother. Then Carty, a couple of minutes later, Ireland do manage to turn that ball over. He carries the ball into a double collision, and the ball spills. Ireland do get lucky on this occasion because the Japan man knocked it forward in contact. But this is the pivotal moment of the entire game right before half-time. This is
sloppiness.
It's a sloppiness, but it's also
a set piece.
Well, sorry, yes.
From the forwards.
100%. And there's a moment in the second half as well where there is an absolutely terrible line-out throw once again. And that was bread and butter under Joe Schmidt, and that had broken down badly. But to kind of push forward that point again, the 35th minute, even though this is an Ireland scrum, I think everybody remembers this moment. This was the key moment in the game, it felt. Ireland lose the scrum against the head. Now, Michael Leach had come off the bench at this point, and I mean, the Japanese scrum was potentially a little bit stronger than Ireland thought it would be at this point. But losing a scrum against the head, I can remember the stadium was absolutely rocking at this point. Japan go down the pitch and score another penalty, and it's 9-12 at half-time at this point. And Carty's restart, in fairness, does go over the try line from that moment, and Japan get a scrum at the halfway line and almost score another try before half time. So things are just going completely haywire for Ireland at this point, whether or not it's all in the set piece or whether or not it's all in Jack Carty. I think there's enough blame to go around at this point. We quickly then just run through some of the moments in the second half. He only plays 20 minutes of the second half. In the 42nd minute, he gets a ball off a scrum. He immediately finds his touch pretty well, going for territory this time. I think there's been a bit of a shift in the second half. It seems like it was a bit of a direct instruction actually from Schmidt at half time. And then in the 50th minute, he goes for another corner after the scrum penalty. But this is where Ireland lose another line out, and just a complete disaster in this area once again, where it could have been try time once again for Ireland.
So what we've had is a lost line out, a lost scrum, and a lost line out.
Yes.
The malfunctioning has happened in the forwards over in the championship minutes either side of half time.
Yeah, exactly. Now, in fairness, if we go back to like the 50th
But it's Jack Carty's fault, everybody. I hope you're paying attention, because you get the quiz to this, and you go, whose fault was the World Cup? Jack Carty. But actually, what happened was the forwards completely disintegrated here.
Yeah, exactly. And like we saw on screen there, the image from the 50th minute where the location is. Like, should that be going between the posts, or is, like, if Sexton has that ball in his hands, is he also going for the corner? Like, I'm not saying it's Carty making this call. Like, I mean, it's not a gimme especially for a right footer, that's for sure. And like, I just wonder at this point, do they think to themselves, we are going to be able to still beat Japan up once we get our maul going off the line out, and it's absolutely going to be try time. And forgetting about the fact that actually their line out had already malfunctioned once in the first half, and getting that maul going is not necessarily a gimme. And also their scrum, they lost the scrum penalty against the head. So you get the sense watching this game that Ireland thought they were going to physically have the upper hand against Japan, and I reckon that was actually part of a factor in selecting Jack Carty from the first place. Like we see in his defensive positioning, he is behind the line for Ireland, whereas if Sexton's playing, he's in the line for Ireland and he's making the tackles. Jack Carty, as I say, misses 3 tackles across the game. I don't think I reckon they felt they didn't need the physicality at 10 throughout this game, which maybe suggests a wider sense of complacency going into this game. If we move then on to just a couple of the last few minutes, then if we move into the 53rd minute, we get a good view from behind the goal of where Carty is in defence, as I say, well behind the line. And then a couple of seconds later, after this ruck, an aerial ball goes up from Japan. As you can see, Carty is due to get under it, but he actually spills the ball. It's a knock on. What we have though is then a couple of seconds later, O'Mahony's off his feet in the same play, and it's a penalty for Japan rather than a scrum for Japan. Tamura does miss it, and this is where Peter O'Mahony gets taken off. Rhys Ruddock comes on, and he had a bad day at the office that day. I think it's fair to say I think O'Mahony would have got sin-binned were it not for him getting substituted by Rhys Ruddock at that point. But, I mean, the hits just keep on coming for Jack Carty. A couple of minutes later, then he slides off a tackle, as we can, I think, see in these next collection of images. And you can just see they're targeting Carty at times here, running straight into his direction at this point, and I think the player just kind of bounces off him. We can see the yards that Japan make off this particular contact.
He's a big L unit.
He is a big unit, and Carty just kind of slides off, and I think there's one more image there just to kind of show. So, like, you can see why people make the case that Jack Carty had a couple of bad moments in defence that day. I'm absolutely not saying that whatsoever, that he had a good day defensively. And then the last thing just to mention then is, like, right after this, Chris Farrell runs straight into CJ Stander after receiving a pass off him inside their own 22, and it's a scrum for Japan inside Ireland's 22, and Japan score from the resulting play in the left corner. It's just between the scrum against the head, 2 line outs, Chris Farrell running into CJ Stander, like, they are pivotal moments that either stopped Ireland from scoring or gifting Japan scores themselves. And then from the 59th minute, you've got Joey Carberry with the ball in his hands, and Jack Carty has been substituted off. Alright,
so that's the deep dive on, but we're going to see him again in the Six Nations because he's in the squad. He's recovered from that, and he's recovered from being scapegoated, even though it was actually a much wider systems malfunction problem that we had. A quick update on what's going on in the world. Shane Lowry's teed off in round 1 of the Abu Dhabi HSBC Championship. So he's got a 25-yard putt for birdie in the first. The Kyrgios Medvedev is about to get underway at the Australian Open. Catherine Murphy's been tweeting from the court saying Kyrgios has plenty of fans in the Rod Laver Arena. They're already doing that Cristiano Ronaldo celebration, which sounds like booing. The players aren't even on court yet. Get ready to hear booing when they arrive. We don't know why the Kyrgios sue adaptation, the fans. We don't know. We'll get to the bottom of that before the end of the tournament. Andy Murray lost the first set though. He is 1 set down and 3-2 down in the second set. I think that's on serve though, so we'll keep you up to date on that as the show progresses. We're going to take a quick break. Still to come, the hurling power rankings, which have a little bit of controversy in them, from Will. Louise Quinn, Republic of Ireland defender. Up next, rugby with Cian Tracy.